Welcome to Camera Shake, the show where we bring you the insider scoop on all things photography and videography with long-term conversations designed to help you stay inspired, informed, and ahead of the curve. I'm your host, Kirsten Nutz, and this episode is a little bit special. As we wrap up the year, I wanted to take a moment to look back, not at every episode, but at 10 conversations from 2025 that really stuck with me. Episodes that challenged the way I think. Episodes that remind me why photography still matters, and episodes that, judging by your messages, resonated just as much with you as they did with me. And this isn't a countdown, it's not about numbers. It's simply a retrospective look at 10 standout Camera Shake episodes from the past year. For each one, I'll briefly introduce the episode and then we'll roll a short clip so you can revisit the moment or discover it for the first time. Quick bit of housekeeping before we dive in. If you enjoy the podcast and want to support what we do here, there's a brand new camera merch available right now. Hoodies, tees, mugs, all designed for photographers who live and breathe this stuff. The link's in the description below. And one more thing, in January, I'll be heading to Imaging USA in Nashville. So if you're going to be there, I'd genuinely love to meet you. Come and say hello, grab a coffee, have a chat. All right, well, let's rewind the year and kick things off with the first episode on my list. AI was everywhere in 2025, but this conversation with Ty Turner cut through the noise. Ty doesn't talk hype, shortcuts, or fear. He talks leverage, workflow, and survival. Whether you love AI or hate it, this episode forced photographers to face reality. Here's a moment that really stuck with me. How do you see AI tools transforming the photography and video industries from here on in?
I think it's twofold. There's the visual side of things, of course, where I think content creators have a unique approach to creating visuals with AI than the average person. And let me give you an example. If you're a content creator, you have the ability to add things to your prompt that a regular person wouldn't add, right? You can add the lens type, you can add the lighting type that the average person just wouldn't think of typing in, hey, I want a 3-to-1 lighting ratio with this image in this prompt that the average person just can't get. So you have the leg up if you're a content creator on the visual side of things, if you work on creating prompts and just kind of embrace the idea of writing better prompts. That's one side of it. The second side of it is it allow you to run your business with less people and faster times by understanding how to use just a few different tools that can help streamline a lot of the process, from website design to SEO to helping you research the right video for your client, from helping you chop up a long form video into shorter videos for your client, which is something you should be charging for. That can be a click of a button to you. It's so many different things in different ways that you can use AI just to help you generate more income that I think a lot of content creators just aren't thinking about. Like, they're so focused on the pretty side, they forget the power of, let's say, something as simple as SEO, right? SEO 2 years ago, you're hiring a team, you're paying thousands of dollars per month. Now you can get an AI tool that looks at your website, checks Google every day, and tell you what you need to change to rank higher. And by ranking higher, you get more leads, you get more calls, you get more clients, you make more money. So, and that's just one of the many tools or many uses for AI on the business side of content creation that a lot of people don't think about. AI is here to stay. So let me get ahead of it.
That's the thing. I think that's actually one of the probably major misconceptions that people have when they think about AI. And it's probably because the conversations are dominated by things like DALL-E and Firefly and all these kind of things that are really more on the pretty picture side of things. But it's all this stuff that actually, with the exception of ChatGPT, maybe, but it's the kind of all that the machine room stuff that actually runs the business sort of thing. But and my perspective is, I'm really, I'm a creative kind of person. I think, a lot of photographers and videographers are in that category. And the funny thing to me is really that the really boring stuff the under the hood stuff, the really mind-numbingly boring lead generation stuff, that's the thing where AI can make such a huge, massive difference.
It's made a huge difference for my business. It's made a huge difference. It allowed me to spend less. My staff is smaller. My reach is greater. It allows me to do a lot more than again just 2 years ago. That's why this industry changes so fast. And I've said it before. It used to be a time where the photography industry or videography industry was just that, but now it's a tech industry, and tech industries double every 12 to 18 months. They grow. What worked 3 years ago won't work now, or won't work as well. So you kind of got to stay on it and kind of listen and pay attention to what's going on. Me in the academy, we have another. I don't say it's a joke, but we have a saying. When it comes to technology, there's three types of people. There's the person that embrace it, that run towards it, that love it. There's the person that fights it. They think it's a fad. It's not going to be here. It's going to be in and out. It ain't going to last long. And then there's the person that don't know about it. They're oblivious to the idea of it. I've heard of Chat GPT, but I've never used it. Right. The guy who embraces it, who loves it, who learns it, his job is to make as much profit off of it as possible before another saying is before it end up on a cell phone. So, we talk about an example, using AI to edit portraits, right? Just to keep it the visual side, people know if you were a portrait editor 5 years ago, you had to be well versed in Lightroom, Photoshop, and then it switched to tools that let you, detect the face and move the slider to adjust skin smoothing. And now it's a filter on Snapchat. Now your grandma's using it. So you have to embrace it early so that you can make the money off of it, make the profit off of it before it ends up on a cell phone. And that's just an example of, portrait editing, but that is also the case when it comes to a lot of other AI tools that you should be focusing on to grow your business right now.
And you mentioned before it's up on a cell phone. The reality is really that now these tools are relatively new, but once the competition level is such that it becomes the norm, that's when you start really losing out if you haven't addressed that particular subject. Because I remember like, only a few days ago, I had a phone call from my mom who asked me to explain to her how to use ChatGPT, and it sort of occurred to me that, man, if my mom is interested in that now in her 70s, right? Then if you are not on it basically, then you are definitely now in the negative. You're definitely starting to lose out now. So, um, okay, so let's have a look at some of the sort of basic processes, in the business. Let's say because we've got like marketing and branding, we've got lead generation, we've got all these things that we would ordinarily do running our business, and really, regardless as to whether it's a large business or a small business, everybody's got to do marketing, everybody's got to do lead generation, no matter whether you're a one-man band or whether you employ 100 employees, you still have to do that because you have to get new business in, through the doors. So, what would you say is like the number one tool that you would recommend, that really everybody should be aware of and should learn how to use in order to make running your business easier?
Of course, we can start with the king of all kings. We can start with ChatGPT. We can start there. And people think, well, I got it, I can type to it, but I think we need to really take more time at understanding the power of that tool. I think people know ChatGPT surface level, but they don't dive deep into the power of ChatGPT. And I'm talking about creating your own section that understands your business. So when you go to it for questions and things like that, it can give you answers based off who you are and not just a general, how do I get more clients? I think people skip over the deep level questions that they should be asking or deep level prompts that they should be providing when using ChatGPT, because ChatGPT can change your life, but you have to take the time to learn it. You have to. What I've learned is people limit themselves because they don't understand how powerful it is. It's almost like they're talking to a toddler. Like, but they're standing in front of a professor and they're trying to, you know, talk to a professor like it's a toddler. You have to learn the prompts and learn how to be more descriptive and learn the information that it needs. And you know what the crazy part is that a lot of people never think about? You can ask it, "Hey, how can I be better at this? What
Oh.
prompts should I be using to get X, Y, and Z?" A lot of people don't know that you can just ask it. It'll tell you. It'll help you be better at it. That's how smart it is.
All right, I really hope you enjoyed that one. Continuous lighting had a serious moment this year, and Jake Hicks was right at the center of it. This wasn't about trends or gear specs, but about control and intent. If you think LEDs are easy mode, this conversation might change your mind. Let's roll a clip.
So if you were like, look, I don't want to spend much money, I want to start off and I wanted to avoid speed lights, then going down the route of like a strobe that you plug into the wall for like £100 is crazy. That does like 90% of what you need. Sure, you can spend a lot more money and get other benefits like a little bit more consistency, a little bit more power, a little bit more controllability and TTL and yada yada yada, all that sort of stuff. But for the most part, in terms of you getting creative with lighting, for £100 strobe, it's gonna do a huge amount for you. Yeah, it
Yeah,
really
and
is.
if you want a little bit more flexibility, so you mentioned the 8200s or the 8200 Pro 2s that have just come out,
That's
even
right.
give
They got
you a modeling
button.
light.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
so you can even do a little bit of video, or at least you have a modeling light. And
Do you know how much they are off the top of your head now?
they're in British pounds. I want to say they're in the sort of £250 region. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. Yeah.
Something around that. I bought a couple of 8200 Pros a few years back to take with me on the plane. And I went to Norway to shoot Northern Lights and Vikings, on location
Wow.
portraits of Vikings, basically in
Okay.
their natural habitat in Northern Norway. And I know it was nuts, but to be honest with you, I mean, you just have to imagine, like, we were tracking out, like, we went out to the Lofoten Islands, which is in the Arctic Circle, and we were tracking out to places that were pretty inhabitable, and we were tracking out there, with our Viking models and everything. And so taking a couple of these 8200 Pros with us really made a difference because you could literally walk out into the flipping prairie,
Phenomenal.
right?
Phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely phenomenal. You don't need any more than that at all.
I'd love to see the sales figures on those 8200s. They must have sold
Huge.
so many of them. There is not a person that I speak to that doesn't have at least one of them. It's crazy. So yeah, to your point, they are excellent lights. And I think that if you had a little bit of extra, cash to spend, and you were like, okay, I want something, I've got, 200 or 300 to spend on a light, those 8200s, but I mean, they're always going to serve you well. And for one of the main reasons that you've just mentioned is you can just throw them in your bag.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the battery power on those, they last absolutely forever. We were shooting all day long. And when I got back to our accommodation, I was like, oh, the batteries are still halfway. Unbelievable.
And that is a core benefit of flash over LED, right? For sure.
Yeah.
Huge. Is the fact that they just go and go and go, right? I've got the Bowen's battery powered ones here, but they're flash. I mean, yeah, they just go all day, no questions asked, which is certainly not the case with LEDs. You just can't do it. Yeah.
So do you use LEDs exclusively now, or is it just a mix?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, and I'll say this: I used flash one time last year.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah. Now, I will caveat that and say that the Rotalights that I use they have the unique ability to flash, right? And I say unique ability because I still think they're the only LED lights that can flash in full color, right? I think Godox, obviously took inspiration from other brands, and they brought out lights that could flash as well, but they didn't do it in color. So these road lights are still the only ones that can flash in color. So this is useful to me because I do a lot of long exposure work. I still do a lot of long exposure lighting, and I kind of need to have a flash in there somewhere to kind of keep the model crisp, right? So I'm doing that with these Rotalights, which is just such a, I mean, I just can't tell you how incredible that is to have all of that and to flash in those 16 million colors as well is wild. But to your point there about last year, there was one shoot. It was a hair shoot I did in a salon, and I looked at because most hair shoots are done in the salon, and most salons are on the street, and that usually means that they have just this whole wall of just glass in front of them,
Yeah.
right? Which you can't block out. So I was kind of like, do you know what? I was kind of hesitant, just kind of hesitant as to, I just don't think it's worth the risk. Let me just take would you shoot it with strobes, because of the power, right? And this is the biggest kind of pushback that I see from many photographers is power, right? Where is the power? Where can it compete? Can I use them? I shoot all over the place. And look, I think that it is a very real concern. It is something to be mindful of. That being said, I just received a bunch of kit from Nanlite, who they just sent me a 500 watt head, right? And it's a full color head, and it does have an external ballast and that sort of thing as well. But for the most part, it's a strobe style head. It's 500 watts, full color, and I would say that it's coming into the realms of affordability, right? I mean, because there are heads out there now, 1200 watts, 1500 watts on film sets pretty regularly. I've certainly been in those situations where we have those heads, and the reason cinema needs those is because those heads need to be like 30 feet back there, right? We can't have them in shot. Like, we need to shoot the scene. We're not doing a headshot here. We need to shoot the scene. So on film sets and that sort of thing, we're starting to see these 1500 watt and up heads, LED heads, becoming a feature. And one of the kind of reasons that's happening on film sets and TVs is because they get a huge kind of kickback for carbon efficiency, right? So if they can reduce their carbon footprint, they can save a shit ton of money. So, before they were using like 10K tungsten heads and that sort of stuff. I mean, they just got like a diesel generator, just like 10 diesel generators just knocking about outside. Like, yeah, they're running those 10K lights like all day. Like, it's a huge amount of power. Running tungsten like that was just colossal. So in an effort to kind of combat this, there are kind of kickbacks to be had for reducing your carbon footprint on set. And it's significant. Hence why we're seeing a lot of cinema and TV kind of embracing the LEDs, because it's like we have to.
Strip away color and suddenly there is nowhere to hide. Peter Coulson talks about restrained emotion and why black and white still demands absolute precision. This episode was a reminder that simplicity is often the hardest thing to master. Have a listen to this moment.
So I want to be fully manual, but then I want to have the tools to say, hey, P, you're an idiot, you're overexposing. Or a branch has moved a little bit and a little spot of light's come and hit her on the ear, but you can't see that. But when you've got something flashing at you, you see it straight away and you say, well, I'll just move a little bit. So I'm, for that point, but even on the Hasselblad, my favorite Hasselblad is the H650. I have 3 of them because you can't repair them. Once they break, they're rubbish bin. The backs, that is. They've got no spares for the back. They're irreparable. But I just bought another one. It's the H4-200. It's a 50 megapixel multi-shot, but it's a CCD sensor.
Oh, okay.
So the ISO 50, ISO 100 is fine. Forget anything else. It just goes terrible. But if you're ISO 50, you're getting you're getting a full, sorry, she'll come in a minute. She's a bit slow coming down the stairs.
That's fine.
If you're shooting at 50 ISO, you're getting about 14.5 stops dynamic range. And you can recover 2 stops of overexpose on top of that. Fully recover. Just by bringing exposure slider down, you get all the detail back in all 3 channels on the old CC. And the dynamic range of that is my favorite in the world. But I've got to be shooting 50 or 100 ISO, which is not always... In the studio, it's doable. With natural light, it's not so doable.
Well, exactly. And but even with constant light, it's probably pushing it a little bit.
Constant light, yeah, it'd be using flash. Constant light's just too bright on the models. They squint the whole time, and people forget that side. With a flash, we can throw f16 on them with a constant light, much more than 5.6. They're squinty.
And that's a really interesting point, because I remember speaking to Jake Hicks the other day, who you might know his work. It's very, very colorful, very
No, Jay. I know him well. Yeah.
Yeah. And he told me he's just recently switched to LED lighting, so he's moved away from strobes entirely, which I sort of found interesting because I'm still fully embedded in the strobe landscape. I like shooting with strobes. It's a personal preference. Have you ever been tempted to go that way?
I've got both. I've had HMIs for a long time. The biggest problem is my studio is very daylight. We got a lot of light in our studio. So as soon as I go with constant light, if it's a sunny, cloudy day, it affects my ambient light a lot. So commercially, it's just not viable. I grew up on strobes. I'm completely happy with them. I'm shooting tethered. I don't even have modeling lights turned on. I'll take my shot. Yeah, move this a bit, move this, and take a shot, and just do my setup. And I find with the strobes too, I've got so much control over everything. Whereas the constants, if I had a black studio, yeah, fine. But with my studio, I just don't have the control I want. I still use them a lot, and I like using them. But I know that if it's going to be an overcast day, I'm fine. If it's going to be a bright sunny day, I'm fine. But if in Melbourne we have a thing called 4 seasons in one day, so it could be a bit hard in Melbourne.
Sounds familiar over here in London. I think it's pretty much the same thing. Yeah.
Yesterday was incredible. We went from, it was about 22 in the morning when I got up, a bit overcast. Then we had some thunderstorms and rain. Then by 4 o'clock, it was 40 degrees.
Wow.
Then by 6 o'clock, it was back down to 21.
I mean, over here, it's not, the temperature doesn't necessarily change that much, but it's literally, the clouds change, or the weather just generally changes so dramatically that, 1 minute, like today, 1 minute I'm sitting on the sofa trying to get the glare off of my screen so I can actually see what's going on because it's that bright and sunny. Then I take the dog out. 5 minutes later, it's overcast, and literally 10 minutes after that, all hell breaks loose, and it's like the rainstorm from hell. It's just all happening, and it's dark, so it's all happening within the space of like an hour. That's the British weather for you right here.
Yeah. No, we see it a bit when we normally come to England, State Shoreditch quite a bit, and we see the weather change there a lot.
Yeah. I like what you said about your daylight studio, because I have exactly the same issues. I have an extension built, and when we built the extension, I thought it would be a good idea to have a skylight put in, which turned out to be probably the worst choice, because it's just a nightmare. I can't really control the light in there unless I shoot with strobe. So I'm kind of stuck with that, for the time being.
Well, I've got 3 skylights, and I could put some screens on rollers and pull them across, but I'm using them all the time. I love it when a client goes, "Yeah, we'll shoot natural light today," and I just use my windows and the skylights and situation. So I really enjoy working that way, just with natural light, not even scrims and natural light. But yeah, with strobes, it's the only time it's ever a problem is if someone wants me to shoot a car, and I just tell clients, I don't have a car studio. My studio's not for cars, shiny things, and the studio's definitely not for sound.
Hey, let me just jump in real quick to tell you about the amazing sponsor of this episode, Platypod. Platypod offers innovative camera support systems designed to unleash your creativity. With their stable, versatile, and portable solutions, you can capture stunning shots like never before. And I'm not just saying that. As the host of the Camera Shake podcast, I can personally vouch for Platypod's incredible products. They've become an integral part of the show. In fact, I'm surrounded by various Platypod products holding up lights, cameras, microphones, and so on. It's really helped to transform the way I make the show and the way I shoot at home, in the studio, and on location. But don't just take my word for it. Explore Platypod's website at www.platypod.com to discover their range of products, including the Platypod Extreme, Platypod tripod heads, and the brand new handle, of course. Make sure to follow Platypod on Instagram and Facebook at Platypod Tripods for exclusive updates, tips, and giveaways. By choosing Platypod, you're not only investing in your photography, but you're also supporting the Camera Shake Photography Podcast. Thanks again to Platypod, our amazing sponsor. Platypod, where innovation never sleeps. In a year obsessed with more gear, more features, more choice, the next conversation went the opposite way. Valerie Jardin makes a powerful case for constraint, intention, and truly seeing. Check out this next clip.
There are photographers who are in it for the art, and those who started because of the gear and the appeal of all this beautiful shiny equipment. Now I do think those people are also legitimate photographers and they love what they do, but I've never been in that camp, so I can't I don't even understand it, to be honest. I've been using one camera, one lens, one focal length for over 10 years now, and I have no desire to change. And so, I mean, good for the camera manufacturers because if everybody was like me, they'd all be out of work. But yeah, I don't understand it, and I really don't think you need all that gear to be creative. Maybe it's the opposite, and I see how the opposite, to be more of a gear minimalist, as not only helped me become a better visual artist, but a lot of the people who learn with me, and how liberating it has been for so many. So it's not just me. I find that people have this idea that the the more gear you have, the bigger your lens, the better you're gonna be. I don't know. But then they realize that maybe all that gear and all those options may be counterproductive to their creativity. And so, yeah.
Is that because the more gear you have, the more it almost like waters down how much you have to stretch your own creative muscle? Do you think that's what it is?
Probably, yeah, and we've all been there. I mean, I used to shoot with my last DSLR 12 years ago was a 5D Mark II, so that dates a little bit. And I had all the beautiful lenses. I was working commercially at the time still, so I had the 24-70, the 70-200, and a bunch of prime lenses, and then you carry half of them in your bag just in case, right? We all had the just in case backpack, right? And lenses that you rarely ever opened because it's a chore to change lens. And while you're changing lens, well, things are happening, especially when you're an urban photographer. It makes no sense. No, I'm thinking, of course, there are a lot of wildlife photographers out there that need the gear. It depends on what you do. Um, but um, but even then, I don't know. Do you really need those 3 extra lenses in your bag at all times? Or can you limit yourself with one and be a little lighter and happier in the process?
I found this years ago. When I think when I first started out in photography, I liked the gear. I couldn't really afford a lot of the gear, so that was the thing. You go like, oh, one day I'll be able to buy that lens, or that, and then I'll be able to do that. And what I found was 2 things. One, I ended up with a lot of lenses and didn't use hardly any of them. So that was one thing. And the other thing I found was that when I went out with my kids, for example, and I'd take, my DSLR camera body and 3 lenses because I thought, oh yeah,
Uh-huh.
I could shoot super wide, so I'd take a 14-24. But I also, of course, need the 70-200 because, sometimes you might need a zoom. And then, of course, you need to cover everything in between. So, out comes the 24-70 as well. And actually, I end up coming home with hardly any pictures
Mhm.
because the whole kerfuffle of taking, putting your backpack down, taking the camera out, putting the lens, by that time, the moment's gone,
Yep.
and
It becomes a crutch too, I think. Um, I don't know. Uh, and even if you have a lot of lenses, as you said, you usually have your favorite one, the one that never leaves the camera, right? So do you really need all these other lenses? Maybe not. Uh, I I never I had lenses because of my job at the time. Then when I quit commercial photography altogether and I focused on just teaching visual storytelling on workshops, I soon realized, like, gosh, it's crazy. I don't want to be carrying this for 10 hours every day on the streets of Paris, Berlin, or Melbourne. It doesn't make sense. So that's when I realized that, okay, let's just try. And I almost went cold turkey, as we say. Um, I I got the X100 just before a big European trip. A lot of people know this story, but a lot of people probably don't. And as people know, I live in the US. I'm from France. I'm a French citizen. And so I spent a lot of time in my country. And so it was a summer trip. And on the way, it was a family trip. Every summer, even when the kids were little, we always spent the summers in Europe. And on the way to Paris, we thought, "Oh, let's just spend a few days in Iceland." And, I had just received the X100, and, I didn't know the camera well yet. It was so it's not a point and shoot. Some people think, "Oh, it's a point and shoot." But no, it's not a camera for everyone. It's really a photographer's camera. I always say that because you have to really, get used to it. It's like nothing else you've ever used.
this next episode wasn't about lighting diagrams or camera settings. It was about connection, trust, and what actually happens between photographer and subject. Pete has a way of cutting straight to the truth, and this moment says it all. Take a listen to this conversation with Pete Coco.
So the face shape, sometimes I find that if you use, for instance, the smaller, harder key light, like you're gonna really cut shadows. You're gonna cut the jawline, the cheekbones, right? So if someone has a really strong features, that I know is going to look good with them. I know it's going to be great with them. However, if their face maybe doesn't have those stronger kind of features, then I want a light that's a little bit less small and hard. So I'll use something a little bit softer, maybe a little bit larger. Sometimes it depends on the age of the person and maybe how many lines they might have on their face. But I mean, when I was early on into this portrait journey, I used to just always light women with that, more like a triangle light. But the more or like people of a certain age with the triangle light, because it fills in, lines and shadows or whatever. But the more that I do it now, and I just really realize that it is just face by face. There's a lot of factors. Sometimes you might get someone who's older that looks really amazing in the harder light because it kind of brings out all of that detail in their face, and it can be very flattering. And so I'll decide in that case. If I have someone also who's really fair, then I don't want to hit them with a lot of light. I want it to be softer and more diffuse. I don't want to blow out the skin tones. And I'll inform the backdrop decisions based on this a little bit too. One thing that people don't realize is that, well, whatever colors you introduce into your portrait will affect the skin tones if you're not careful. So if they're wearing this is why we tell people, well, don't wear a bright red shirt because your skin will look red. So sometimes if I have someone who's a very fair skin tone, I want to put them in front of a warmer backdrop because it'll add a little bit of warmth to them. So those are the kinds of decisions I'm making. If I have someone with a very wide face, then I will shoot close with the 50 and intentionally flatten it out a little bit, right? Because if you shoot them at 135, then their face will look wider and flatter than it actually is. So all of these decisions are things that the more people you photograph, the more faces you see, the more you can kind of make like an internal library that you can inform the next shoot much better than the one before it. And then, when you shoot enough people, you realize that a lot of people have similar kinds of faces, similar kind of shapes of their different features. And then you just start to instinctively know, okay, if I put this person this way, or if I pose them that way, or if I use this kind of a light, it's going to look great with them. And then at the end of the day, I'll also just throw everything at them sometimes. So, because, often you just, like we said at the beginning, you'll find a happy accident can happen where you're not sure if they like it or that they will like it, and they wind up loving it. And we don't see people the way they see themselves. And this is tough for us as photographers, because generally we see them in a better light than they see themselves, right? Because we're always our most vocal critics of our own features, of our own face. And then we see ourselves in mirror image all the time, like when you brush your teeth, when you look at your phone. So when someone takes your photo and you see it on the screen, you're actually seeing your face the way it looks to everyone else, as far as it's reversed. So people can be very critical. However, there's also people out there who, and God bless them, they just love their face. And so like they know that they have maybe a strong chin, or, a nose that's not a traditional shape or whatever. And they love that about themselves. So I find that it's really a balancing act of wanting to make people look their best, but also remember that you have this unique face in front of you. And a lot of times it's cool because I'll get people who they just are in love with their face. And it's really, that's the best, because they're open and they're very much going to give you genuine natural expressions. It's much more rare to get that, however, but they're out there too. So I try to keep an open mind, and I try to be very non-judgmental when I take people's pictures, because if I see a feature that I think to myself, well, this feature I want to try and minimize, usually they'll agree with me. I would say 80% of the time, but there's 20% of the time where they're totally cool with the way they look. And so I think that's awesome. We should all be like that.
Absolutely. I always say this, like the standard phrase, that people use when they walk into my studio, like literally every single person the first words they utter is usually, I hate having my photo taken.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, well, we'll have to change your mental attitude. I mean, usually by the time they leave, they've had a really good time, and that's the thing.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about posing and about getting expression. So you mentioned it just now. The best lit portrait, in my view, is worth nothing if the subject doesn't give you something, an expression. It might just be, a particular pose and angle, but it's got to be something in that image that makes that portrait speak, so to say. How do you get your clients to give you what it is that you're looking for?
This is the hardest part, I think, of portraiture, because I'm with you. You can have a portrait that's lit beautifully. All the T's and the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted, but if it doesn't have an expression that says something, then you're missing the main ingredient. So I find that I like to meet people where they're at, and then get them to kind of maybe do something that they would normally do. So whether it's a smile for someone who never smiles, or not a smile, something more serious for someone who isn't, but I just like to get to know them as well. So I make sure that I connect with them on some level. And I mean, you got to just be a personable person, and I don't think you need to have a certain kind of personality. However, you do just need to be yourself and connect with people. So I'm just me, and I have a very, unique personality like we all do. And so I just try to be myself with them. And I find that people will open up to you when they see that you're open to them and that you're just, there to share the same goals.
Looking back can sometimes be the best way to move forward. Mark Viera dives into George Orwell's Hollywood lighting, not to copy it, but to understand it. This episode bridged history and modern portraiture beautifully. Here's a standout moment for me. What inspired you, let me say, to first start writing about photographers like George Orwell in the first place?
Well, in a way, it was like what you were describing, seeing your grandmother's work, photography work, and seeing that it had a different quality to it. For me, this happened in 1958 when I was about 8, seeing movies on TV that were appearing suddenly from the studio. The Hollywood studios were selling or leasing their pre-1948 libraries of films. And I say 1948 because they didn't want to pay residuals to the actors in the films, so they used that as a cutoff point. So films made between roughly 1929 and 48 were everywhere. The morning movie, the afternoon movie, the late show, the late late show, and this is on local TV as opposed to networks. And they would arrive at the TV stations in 16 millimeter prints, and the TV stations would cut them to fit time slots and usually cut chunks and chunks of them out. And of course, there had to be commercials every 10 minutes. So, but I did see these movies that looked like nothing in 1958 because the cultural landscape had changed dramatically since the 30s. And the big thing about seeing these movies was that I wanted to go research them at the local public library. And there I found some books, not many, unfortunately, because there weren't many. The history of the movies, like the pictorial history of the talkies by Daniel Blum. And so they had lots of pictures in them. And that's what I was gravitating to, the imagery that I saw because it looked so different. And we'll get to that eventually, why it looked different, but I was just fascinated by these movies. So I made student films in grammar school and high school, went to film school at USC, that's the University of Southern California, the cinema school there, uh, pretty much in an effort to emulate what I had seen in these classic films. And in high school, I was lucky to have the school that allowed me to rent 16 millimeter prints of these movies. So I was able to study them, more closely than I could by seeing them on TV. I learned how to make frame enlargements from the images in the films and, print them in a dark room. I started it in a dark room when I was 19 in October 69 at Cal State Hayward. And I got a work study job. So I was a paid photographer when I was 19 doing darkroom work and taking pictures on campus for the audiovisual department. They had various needs. In any case, my fascination with this era hit a new level when I was in college, and a fellow student showed me these fan magazines from the early 30s. I knew they existed, but I didn't realize how prominent they had been and how influential. And there were these portraits of stars whom I knew and revered and loved. In fact, I had written to. I wrote to Greta Garbo. I wrote to Norma Shearer. Nobody answered, unfortunately. But I saw under the photographs, it said photographed by Hurrell or photographed by Clarence Sinclair Bull. Now, there had been a book out from Clarence Bull, I guess in around 68. It was called Faces of Hollywood. And it was he told his story in there about being the head of the MGM still department. He he omitted any mention of George Hurrell because they didn't have a happy relationship. But but I was acquainted with Bull, but not with Hurrell, curiously enough. The only mention of him in a book up to that time had been in 1959 in Joan Crawford's autobiography, Portrait of Joan. She mentioned Hurrell, and there was illustrations in there, and she credited him in every one of them because she felt that he had been instrumental in making her a star and sustaining her stardom. So when I saw these fan magazines, the next thing, of course, was that my friend had original prints, and these were, to use the parlance of the time, mind blowing. Because I was shooting with 35 millimeter and printing on 8x10 on poly contrast F Kodak paper, but I'd never seen anything like these prints. The clarity, the tonal scale, the imagery itself just was really phenomenal. And so I just wanted to know all about this. And I was working part-time at the audiovisual department at USC at the School of Dentistry, where they had a beautiful studio and a large darkroom. And even though my job there was to push cards to different classrooms for teachers to use, projectors and so forth, I was spending a lot of time in that photo studio, and this led to a full-time job. So at the same time that I was learning about large format photography at this job, being able to use film and paper at will, in lieu of raises, salary raises, um, I tried to get in touch with Harrell, and I had gone to MGM and met the head of the stills department there. And of course, if you were a USC student, that had a certain sheen to it, importance to it. So I was able to get in certain places, but when I called Harrell, he was just not interested in talking to me at all. But then a year later, in the fall of 1975, I was able to meet him because it transpired that he was doing a book of his work to, I guess, to to knock Clarence Bull's book off the racks, and needed images that he did not have in his own collection because he had not retained very many of his photographs or negatives. But MGM, this man at MGM, Dory Freeman, the head of the stills department, and coincidentally, Joan Crawford's greatest living fan, had a house full in West Hollywood, a house full of original MGM stills. So my job was to shoot copy negatives at USC Dental School and then, deliver them to George Harrell in North Hollywood.
Photography has a reputation for being a solo pursuit, but does it have to be? Mark Wallace made a compelling case for collaboration, community, and shared momentum. In 2025, this felt more relevant than ever. Let's jump into this clip.
One of the best things about collaborating and being a part of a photo community, being a part of a photo club, going on photo walks, that kind of stuff, is that you get the benefit of other people's experience.
Yes.
So one of the things, I love going to New York and hanging out with Ab Cisse in his studio, because not only is he a fantastic photographer with 30 plus years of experience, he also works for the Mac Group. And so he has access to toys that sometimes aren't even on the market yet. And so I get to walk around and be like, oh, I wouldn't have never thought of doing that thing. Or what is this thing? Or, how would you do this? Or people just doing things that you never thought of. Like, oh, I would have never thought of that. Just observing people. And then you take those and now they're part of your toolbox. And when you're shooting, somebody else sees you do that. And they're like, oh, I wouldn't have thought of that. Being an assistant. So the first, many years of being a photographer, I tried to be an assistant as much as possible. Because it's one of the best ways to learn your craft. And not just for one person, but for many, many different artists. Because some people will be like, you've got to use, like I shot with I assisted a guy, Kareem Samsi Basha. He was in Birmingham when I was back in college. He shot for Life magazine when that was a thing, National Geographic, Sports Illustrated. And then he also had like family portraits, and he shot for pretty much anybody he would shoot. But he had a 300 millimeter, massive 300 millimeter Canon lens that he had like a suitcase for. And I think it was a 300 prime, but it was this massive, massive lens. And that's the only lens he would shoot portraits with because he wanted the compression, the shallow depth of field and everything. And so early days, I'm like, oh, I have to get one of these lenses. are, you know, at that time, $8,000 or something for one of those. It was so expensive. And then, I was shooting with somebody else and they were using like a 50 plastic Fantastic. And, that lens is what, $150. And they were getting spectacular stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay, I don't need to spend $8,000 on this lens to get the look I want. I can get something similar with a $150 lens. It's you don't have to do the exact thing that your mentor is doing. That's a good lesson. Another great thing about collaboration, I'll give you a couple examples. Sometimes when you're collaborating, the person that you're collaborating with will smack you around and set you straight. I guess that's the best way to put it. And sometimes you need that. And one of the people that I've worked with in the past that is just really good at doing that is Gavin Hoey. And we were doing these Taskmaster. I don't know. You probably know Taskmaster. US people, if you don't know what Taskmaster is, go to YouTube, start watching it. There's 20 seasons now. It is one of the best shows on the planet. But when I was in London, my motorcycle was stolen and I ended up living at Gavin's house for about a month, I think. I lived in his spare bedroom. And so we would watch this show, Taskmaster, and it was where people have these ridiculous tasks that they have to accomplish. And we're like, let's do this on Adorama TV, but for photography. Let's have Sam, so Gavin's wife, let's have Sam create these photo tasks. We won't know what they are, and then we'll just have to do them. So we did a bunch of these. Only a few of them aired because A, they weren't entertaining, and B, a lot of them they just weren't ready for prime time. But a couple of them, one of them was we had to go to a dollar store. I forgot what you guys call it in England.
I think it's pound stretcher or something.
Yeah. So you go to you get $1. You have to buy stuff. And so we had $3 or £3. And we had to buy 3 different props. And then we had to go in the studio and we had to use those props in the studio to create a portrait. And I was shooting one, I think it was with this light bulb, and it just was going nowhere. It was just like, this is stupid. This is dumb. And when you're shooting a YouTube video, if it's not working, you just scrap it and you shoot something else. And I'm like, nah, okay, let's be done with it. And Gavin was like, no, you have to finish. You don't get an out. We're not just going to scrap this episode. You have to finish this task. And I'm like, do I? I mean, we could just not do it. He's like, no, you're doing it. Like, work harder. He was just basically like, you're giving up too soon on this task. Get it done. I mean, he's Gavin, so he would never say it the way I just said it. He's very encouraging and nice. And so I'm like, okay. I just did not want to do it. And in the end, I created a portrait. I'll send it to you. It's this girl like, aha, I got this idea. And I figured out a way to make it work. And I would have never done that if he hadn't said, just, work harder. And, he gave me some ideas and stuff. That's the kind of thing that you need sometimes when you're just like, oh, okay, I'm done with this. I'm just like, I'm done. You need somebody to be like, come on, you're not done. Get some coffee, run around the building, do whatever you need to do. Don't stop. Keep going. And sometimes you'll be the person giving that feedback to somebody because you might see like, okay, I can see that Kirsten is on the edge of something that's going to be great. I don't know what it is because I'm not you, but I know you can get there, but you're giving up. I need to make sure you don't give up on this thing. You just need a little push because your energy is low or you're just discouraged or whatever it is. And that is a fantastic thing that happens when you work in a team. A lot of times when you're just solo and nobody's going to see me give up, you just give up. But when you're working in a team and you're like, well, everybody's going to see me give up, I can't give up. It's like jogging alone is totally different than jogging in a group.
Iconic portraits don't happen by accident. They're built on trust, access, reputation, and years of showing up. The third Mark in this list, Mann, pulled back the curtain on what it really takes to work at this level. Here's a moment worth revisiting.
Do you think that especially with celebrities, I would assume that the vast majority of their interactions during the day, especially when they meet people that they haven't met before, the vast majority of those interactions might be on this really superficial level. Like as you said, I really liked you in Mission Impossible 4, rather than on that slightly deeper human level. And do you think that when they encounter you, maybe that's the disarming part where they go like, oh, actually, not many people talk to me like that.
I think so, and it's I think with when you're interacting with any other human being, it's about first of all, it's about respect. It doesn't matter what the guy comes to my door to deliver a package. Thank you very much. I appreciate this. I have your package. The guy comes to deliver food. Thanks very much, man. I truly appreciate that. It's great. Just and I think that it's genuine. This guy's doing something for you, whether he's being paid or not. This is the service that he's providing or whatever. And I think genuinely that if you can, thanks for coming in. I appreciate you. And I think with celebrity, I think most of them are they're guarded because first of all, they're being looked after by people, and they're being taught to be a certain way, and a lot of the younger people begin to forget they have a personality because they're being told not to do A, B, and C. And I don't hold them responsible for it. The people around them that look after them and I understand their position too, because the publicist's job is to protect their client. And it's a fine balance, between just, I respect you, but come on, come down a bit, come down to me, come down to my level. We don't have to be up there, we don't have, it's just like, and I think if you can hit that point and be genuine. I mean, if I'm photographing somebody, I maybe do a little research on them. I'll certainly do a little research. And I'm not looking to see, what they did in Mission Impossible 4. I'm looking to see, they have kids. Oh, cool. How are the kids? Kids all right? What's your son doing this summer? Oh, my son. Oh, he's a baseball cap. Oh, cool. How's he doing with baseball? Do you know what bat he uses? And all of a sudden, I think that kind of brings people down to like this. I'm a human being and I have a kid in baseball camp and he uses a baseball bat. And I think if you can do that, and I think you have to be genuine about it, you have to care, you find a connection. Oh, my kid's in baseball camp. I think that's the way to do it. Oh, that's the way I do it.
I tell you what, this is actually super interesting because what I'm just realizing is that, most celebrities, I suppose, basically lead a double life. They are, I don't know, Tom Cruise, the film star, and then Tom Cruise, the guy who takes the trash out. And I think being able to poke through that layer, that layer of protection, that's really when I'm guessing that's when you're really getting people to open up, and be themselves, rather than the sort of the fake celebrity persona that the publicist wants to see, and that that they're trying to project to the outside world, because we live in a world where everybody's got a smartphone with a camera, and people get snapped left, right, and center. Which is why when I look at your portraits, I'm really always astonished how natural these expressions are and how fun they are. That to me is very interesting.
I talk nonstop. There's not a lot of silence, it's a lot of talking, a lot of, I think disarm is a good word. You gotta disarm people. But and sometimes, often I feel miserably, and it's like there can be like disaster ensues. Like, oh, this guy talking to me, this man is talking to me. But disarming, and it's difficult to decide what came first, whether it was my personality to begin with. I always liked to kind of do that. I did a lot of magic as a kid.
Oh, okay.
And one of the things I really loved about doing magic, and I didn't realize this till recently, till somebody told me this, that why kids love to do magic is because they have a little control over adults.
Oh, okay.
Right? That's adults. And well, when my friend who's a magician explained this to me, there was a lot of clarity on this. And I really loved that. And I really loved having this little control over people or having this ability to just, get a reaction or impress somebody. I don't know if impress is the right word. And it was just always something that, I discovered photography, and photography became kind of more my tool to do this with. But I think it came from the same place about just having this ability to make something happen between me and somebody, and us both leave with a good feeling. I don't know. Listen, there's a lot of people that are going to tell you I'm a complete asshole and this is all bullshit. And you should see Mark on Tuesday when he hasn't had his coffee at midday. Let's hear all the Zen stuff then, you idiot. But I think genuinely, and I'm certainly way far from perfect, but I think that is my way to try and get things done, is by being pleasant and giving people a pleasant experience on interactions. Disarm them.
This was one of the most honest and sobering conversations of the year. Neil Zlozower talked openly about ownership, rights, and the realities behind legendary images. Every photographer should hear this, especially early in their career. Let's roll the clip.
Well, if you want to be artsy fartsy, business is business, okay? So, back in the heyday, you'd never get a contract. Like now you sell a photo record company for publicity or whatever, you get contract. And the contracts are always written up not to help the photographer, but to help the person who wrote the contract. So, but if you're hired to do a specific thing, me being a photographer, when a band came in or a client hired me, I usually would sit down with the band or the client and go, okay, what are you looking for? What do you want to do? Do you have any ideas? And they said, Zloz, just do your thing. We trust you. You know what you're doing. But a lot of times I was hiring you and they have a preconceived notion of what they want or what they're looking for. It's funny, back in the 80s, I got hired to do photo shoots and everything like that. And there would always be an art director involved. And the art director would come up with some concept. He wouldn't even talk to the band. He would come up with this concept. And then the day of the shoot, the art director would come into the photo shoot and we'd sit down with the band and the art director, okay, guys, this is what I came up with. We want to do this. We want you to look like this. And we're going to have this. And the band would go, dude, that's fucking lame. We aren't going to do that. Here the art director spent a month thinking of this idea without even consulting the band. So I would always, even though I was hired by the art director of the record company, I would always do what the band wanted to do, because the longevity was in siding with the band and being on their side. The art director, he could hire you for, and usually you were hired to do the project anyway, because the band said, we want Zloz, not because the art director said, oh, I want to hire Neil Zlozower. He's a great photographer. It's like the band would say, no, we want Zloz to do it. And then the art director would just come up. So, look, contracts, you got to read them with a fine-tooth comb, because they will never help the photographer, period. The contract only helps the person that hands you the contract. It's never going to be in the photographer's favor, period. That's all there is to it. So if anybody's listening to it, you get a contract, you better read it really good and make sure it never says this is a work for hire contract, which means they own your copyright. If it says work for hire, or if it says, well, you relinquish all your copyright to the work and we now own it, never sign that, period. Go on.
How much sort of pulling power did you have, back in the day? Like, could you basically say to art directors or to the record company, well, basically, we're doing it on my terms, or we're not doing it at all? Like, how did that work back then?
I would never put it that way, But I would just maybe say, look, I'm not going to sign this. You got to make, revisions on the guy. I'd still do it. I mean, we just got a contract 2 days ago. They're doing a Randy Rhoads documentary, and we get them stupid fucking retarded contract that was just ridiculous. And for what they want to pay for each photo, we aren't going to sign it the way it is. So we shoved it back in their face and said, nope, 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 nope. We didn't get it back yet saying, okay, we're going to go with your stuff. But we know they can't get those photos anywhere else. So they're either going to do it our way, or else they're going to have to go look for other Randy Rhoads photos from other people. But we have probably the best Randy Rhoads photos in the world, if you ask me. So if they want those, we're going to have to do it our way.
Do you find that there's like sort of a, what's the word? Like a trend when it comes to, certain images? Like, for instance, what I'm trying to say is like, when, we talked about Eddie Van Halen earlier, who passed away a couple of years ago. Well, Ozzy just passed away even yesterday. Do you find that there's sort of an increase in demand for images when these things happen, for example?
There may be for a bit, but usually when that happens, those are news items. They need the photos like in 10 minutes, okay? Because they want to be the first, on the online sites to break the stuff. Maybe like Classic Rock will do an Ozzy special issue in a month in a printed. There's not a lot of printed rock and roll magazines anymore. I mean, that's all. Why would you want to spend money to have a magazine printed that you have to get your distributor 50%? You got to print it, okay? So it costs money for the printing. The paper costs money. The ink costs money. You got to pay the photographer, and then it's got to go to the printer. The printer, it makes money. Once it's printed, you got to get it to the newsstands. So trucks have to deliver it to the newsstands. The people driving the trucks get money. The newsstands take whatever they take. And I remember once I was at the NAMM show. I told you it's this big thing they have every January where all the music vendors go to in Anaheim. And this new magazine was coming out with their very first issue. And they were going to have this big booth at the NAMM show that cost them thousands of dollars. So I go to their booth at the NAMM show. They didn't have the new magazine. I go, what happened? They go, well, there was an incredible, really bad winter in the Midwest in the United States that year. The truckers couldn't get the magazines anywhere. The truckers they couldn't get them anywhere. They couldn't drive the magazines out to California. They couldn't get them to the newsstand. So this whole thing, they spent thousands on a booth at big hoopla party. There was no magazines to back it up. So online, they could put together anything instantaneous within seconds. Ozzy died yesterday. There were probably 1,000 different websites and media news outlets that had stuff on Ozzy within minutes of the news breaking that Ozzy died.
Definitely, my phone was a flood with images, like pretty much instantaneously.
Right, exactly. So I mean, it's a whole different world out there than it was 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Yeah. If you could rewrite the rules of photography rights, in 2025, what would that look like?
Photography routes?
Rights.
Oh, rights.
Yeah.
Well, all I can say is, look, the photographer owns the rights to their photos. They should have to be registered to sue someone. And obviously, someone using your images without paying you or asking you permission and just stealing them is, thievery, and it should be punished accordingly, whether it's being thrown in jail or whether it's paying a hefty amount of money,
Retouching has changed fast in 2025. Lisa Carney breaks down where the industry is heading and why taste and restraint matter more than ever. This felt like the perfect way to close out this year. Here's a final clip. Give us a bit of an update what you've been working on since the last time we spoke to you over here.
Oh, so much has changed. So much has changed. So, work-wise, things are definitely shifting quicker than I expected in terms of AI and traditional work. I am leaning more into my photography and more into mobile photography and that kind of workflow for professional work, not for hobbyists, but for professional work. So, yeah, things are interesting. I've been doing a lot of traveling with my mobile photography. So that's been exciting. A lot of portrait shooting, etc.
That's actually, yeah, that's super interesting. I mean, I see you, on social media and stuff. You've been to France, you've been to Portugal, I think.
Yeah, Africa. Yeah, all over. It's been pretty exciting. Yeah.
You know what? Really, what I find really interesting is, what you mentioned about mobile photography and the impact that it has on your professional workflow. Give us a little bit of an idea of how, mobile photography actually fits into this really high end retouching.
Yeah. All right. So first of all, capturing assets. So more and more, I'm actually capturing assets I need to fill in on posters and whatnot. Posters, who prints anymore? It's all digital. You know what I mean? For entertainment work, I'll capture more and more assets. But also, I use a lot of Lightroom. I'm a Lightroom mobile girl. It's my favorite thing. And I'm going to tell you something a little embarrassing. I am faster on this phone with Lightroom than I am on desktop Lightroom. Now, look, I know they're the same thing. I know. But my hands are faster. So more and more, I'm sending my images to my phone to process and then send it back to the computer to work on my large station. Don't tell anyone that. Oh, wait, we're telling everyone. Wait.
Well, I had an interesting conversation along those lines with Jesus Ramirez the other day. And the thing is, for me, I find Lightroom Mobile super useful, especially when I'm traveling, especially when I'm preparing images for social media. It's just so much easier because everything's on your phone or your iPad, and then you upload it straight away, to Instagram, Facebook, whatever it may be, Blue Sky, whatever. The workflow the simplicity in that workflow is just second to none. You just can't do that with an actual camera. And although I could say to myself, oh, well, but I want to capture this image with, 45 megapixels and yada, yada, yada. Still, there's a lot of kerfuffle involved in getting the card out, putting it into a card reader, uploading it to your computer, starting Lightroom Classic, da-di-da-di-da-di-da. And then you're sort of bound to this one spot, your computer.
Yeah. Yeah. I have some thoughts about this. You ready?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So I think it's helpful to compartmentalize your work and or your business and or your photography needs. So I have my personal work I do, and then I have client files. So I do a lot of client direct social media content production. It's a really great bread and butter type of business. I am actually capturing, processing, extending canvas, adding type, adding effects on this and delivering it while I'm in the driveway. Like I haven't left the location yet. So you can't do that on a large sensor camera. But what's the job? If the job is social media production and the fidelity is good enough, great. It's not a billboard. It's not a poster. So I think it's good to kind of find lanes for a workflow.
I think you're absolutely right. This is what I always say. It's like, you always have to think about what the raison d'être is. Like, why are we doing this? Because otherwise it might be total overkill. Like, for instance, in my sort of day-to-day headshot commercial imagery sort of thing, if I'm shooting I always give this example. If I'm shooting an email, if I'm shooting like a photo for an email signature that's like 190 by 190 pixels, the level of retouching that goes into that final product is considerably less than if it's something that's going to be blown up and it's going to end up on the side of a bus, let's say. So there's always that relativism, whatever the word is.
I'll take that word. Yes.
Yeah. Relative. I don't even know what the actual word is. So do you find that your process has changed dramatically over the last year and a half?
100% changed. I mean, it's just gone. And I mean, imagine one of the things. So I'll give you a specific example. I have a healthcare client And I go to a clinic and I capture pictures. I have to say capture now. I don't know. We don't say shoot anymore in America. Capture images. And while I'm there, I'm working out the ratios because, social media buys, you have the vertical, you have the horizontal. And then, some of the product shots, because they sell products in that clinic, I'm like, oh crap, I need to move over 2 inches on the right. I don't get back to the studio and go, oh, I wish I would have moved over 2 inches to the right, because I'm doing all that processing right there. And even to the extent, I don't know if this is pertinent to the conversation, but there's Photoshop on the mobile now. I use Photoshop on mobile to extend Canvas sometimes. And I don't limit myself to single apps, single usage apps. I use 4 or 5 apps in one flow. And I find this makes it profitable because the budgets have been dropping so much. And as I said, client direct is not a high paying industry. It's mom and pop shops. So I did not focus on client direct before. It wasn't worth my time.
How did you get into that? How did you make that shift?
Okay, we're about being direct here, right?
Sure.
Fear. My industry, entertainment industry, high-end retouching is shifting so quickly. And the amount of production is drastically reducing. I mean, how many movies are put out this year? Not that many. There's streaming, but even streaming content has been reduced. So I'm kind of someone who looks at down the road and is like, wait a minute, money's going to be shifting. I better reach out. So I started volunteering in my local community for the public library and the City of Commerce. And then all of a sudden that just opened me up to a huge plethora of direct clients. So I volunteered, shooting portraits for the local library and for the board, that kind of thing. And then it just opened up.
So there you have it, 10 episodes from 2025 that for me really define the year. What stands out looking back isn't just the techniques or tools, it's the honesty, the craft, the willingness to adapt, and the shared love of photography that runs through every single conversation. If you've listened to even one of these episodes this year, thank you. If you've listened to all of them, you're an absolute legend. Camera Shake only exists because of this community. The listeners, the guests, the photographers who keep asking questions and pushing forward in an industry that never stands still. If you'd like to support the podcast, don't forget to check out the new merch. And if you're heading to Imaging USA in Nashville, please come and say hello. I'd love to meet you in person. More conversations, more stories, and more inspiration coming in the new year. Have a great Christmas and a fantastic new year. Until next time, in 2026, keep shooting, keep shaking things up, and I'll see you next Thursday.